fucking beer. In today's video, we are going to change the valve cover gasket in E46 BMW. Mine is a 2002 BMW 325xi with an M54 engine. Changing the valve cover gasket is also a good time to change your spark plugs as well. So you can kill two birds with one stone. What you're going to have to do is remove this micro filter housing. These are half clips. And once you get them in the right spot, they just pull up. Basically, if you turn them halfway. And then my filter's got to come out. Put that somewhere. Then we're going to have to remove the wire loom. And then there's 4 torque screws underneath. 1, 2, 3, 4. You're going to remove that, and we're going to pull this section out. So the next step is to remove the fuel rail. And there's 2 little caps right up here. And then there's 2 10mm bolts underneath there, and you want to remove that, pull that cover off. So once you remove the cabin air filter and the housing, everything else, you're exposed with the valve cover here, but you're not actually at the valve cover yet. You got to remove this cap here, and there's 2 little ends here. You got to pop them out, and actually the one back there is missing. It's been missing for a while. So you got to remove that cover, and that's going to give you access to your coils and all your other bolts. So this point here, I removed the battery cable. I believe this goes to starter. It's a 19mm nut, and I removed that to get that out of the way. And then I removed all the wiring harness for your coils as well. And basically how it works is this tab, you just basically pull this straight up like that, and then the wiring, actually I'll just plug this one back in and show you. So here we go. Pull that up. And yeah, there we go. Pulled it out. So now they got this loose, I'm going to pull the coil packs out, and all your coil packs, there's 2, looks like 8mm bolts, 8 or 10mm bolts. Pull those out, and we're going to yank the coils out. Alright, so at this point here, we got all the coil packs taken out and removed just for one. Just want to show you for purpose. These actually, just push in like that, and you just grab them and pull them out. They actually come out pretty easy. These ones here actually have some little grooves on top you just yank them out with. And if you want, you can organize your coils per what hole you took them out. I don't really give a shit. Remove this ground cable here. There's 2 grounds up at the front, another ground up there. We got to pull those out because all these bolts in the middle help pull down the valve cover. And we're going to pry this thing away. And there's little clips down there. See if I can zoom in on there. So we gotta like just gently lift that and pull this whole coil pack wiring assembly aside. So I'm gonna do that right now. Once you dislodge your coil bar here, and it's got the big cable on, you set it aside, right? And then we're going back to the engine, and you want to disconnect down here in the side all your vacuum lines and your, I believe it is O2 wires. You can see some oil there because I have been leaking through there, as you can see. So at this point here, everything's removed. So now we're going to start removing all the screws that bolt your valve cover gasket on. There's all along here, all through the middle here. Your spark plugs obviously in the middle. You don't need to remove them to change the valve cover gasket. That'll be a separate video. All along the bottom, and the vanos cover here. So I'm going to start by removing this and then work my way back. So now we got everything loose, and I just tapped the valve cover, and some of these washers are now starting to come loose. So now we're going to very gently there we go. We're out. We're out, ladies and gentlemen. We're out. Alright, this point here you can go ahead. This is a good time for you to go over everything because the engine's exposed. You can check shit out like your camshaft runs here so you can inspect your journals. See if there's any wear. My vanos, there's a lot of buildup of shit on the vanos here. I'm going to clean that up before I replace the gasket. Even on my valve cover gasket. There's a bunch of shit that's built up. I'm going to go ahead and try to clean that up as much as I can. Then once I get that cleaned up, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it, but I am going to clean it up a little bit. And then we're going to go about replacing this valve cover gasket, get it back together, and then tomorrow we'll rip the spark plugs out and do that in a separate video. So now we're ready to put the gasket back on, or the valve cover back on. You can see I put some silicone right in the corner there, in the vanos, and on the other side there. That's going to help. BMW recommends that you do that to help prevent any kind of leaks. And then over here, I have the valve covers all put in. Your spark plug seals right here, and of course on the outside. And your old ones are on the floor here. They're all dried and cracked. That was at one time rubber, and now they're just, you can hear it crack. So now we're gonna put that back on and tighten her up. All right, this part we got everything put back in. When you put the valve cover gasket in, before you get too crazy with tightening it down, you kind of want to feel around the sides, and you want to make sure the gasket is in place, because sometimes if you're putting it on, like especially you got to put it on flat and it's such a large gasket that sometimes it may kind of fall out of place, and then when you go to tighten her down, it might not be in the grooves where it's supposed to be, so it might not fit right. So always make sure it is. And then I torqued it down to 6 foot-pounds of torque. And basically how I did is I started with like this end, and then that end, then I'm going to get the corners done, and then I just kind of torqued down the middle first, and then from there I kind of went crisscross here, there, 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 you know what I mean, crisscross around, and then I went through around the clock once and down the middle, and then rechecked the torque and make sure everything was good. And then from then I put all the wiring back on the side. And this is a good time when you got this all apart, is this vacuum line that goes to this check valve here. If you watch some of my other videos, I did a video on how to check to see if that check valve's working. And it's a good time to check that line. And it goes around the back, see if there's any vacuum, see if the vacuum line's cracked, whatever. So I put that back in, I inspected it, it looks good. I put the coil wires back in. So basically from this point, I'm going to end the video today, but it's not done, because tomorrow I'm going to come back and I'm going to continue a separate video by changing the plugs, and then I'm going to finish up by putting it all back together. So now, you got all your plastic covers back on the engine. Before you put your cabin filter and all that on, you want to start the car. You want to make sure there's no engine codes or anything, especially after changing the spark plugs or the valve cover gasket, depending on which video you're watching. I'll post a link to the other one below just in case you want to see how they're both done. It's a good time to start it, like I said, because any codes at this point you can just easily access it. If your spark plugs are missing, or if your valve cover gasket's leaking, there's a good possibility that an engine code might come up, so it's a good time to start it. So we're going to fire it up and let it run for a couple seconds. See if there is an engine code. Alright, so I just fired it up, let it run for a couple minutes. Everything seems to be good at this point. So now we're going to replace the cabin air filter, put all that shit back together, and then this top part of the project's done. I gotta flip the car around and try to replace the other tailing arm, because in my other video there's like a short version of the rear suspension parts, and you just have to watch the videos. Anyways, we're going to finish this off, then I'm going to give some closing comments. Valve cover gasket change is pretty simple too. It's it'll probably take you an hour, hour and a half. You want to make sure that you don't get any debris inside the engine itself. Like I said, it's a good time when you got the valve cover off. You can inspect your vanos, or check the camshaft anywhere. Check for shit. I got a bunch of gum and varnish built up inside, so next time I change oil, I'm going to buy a cleaner that I just dump in, let it run, because it'll clean most of that crap up. But other than that, fucking beer. When you put the valve cover back on, the valve cover itself is plastic, so you don't want to over tighten it, because there's a good possibility it might break because everything else on BMWs is pretty fragile. It's cheap and it's plastic. And if you live in a cold climate like mine, it's gonna get brittle. So just be careful. And I hope this video helped you out. Anyways, if you have any other questions, comments, or concerns, post them below. Otherwise, keep fucking pounding beers.